Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us wherever you are. I am Otis Fulton. I am the Vice President for Psychological Strategy at Turnkey. And in addition to doing things like writing copy for nonprofits, I study how a person's identity impacts their charitable behavior. Most recently, I completed a study on Facebook fundraising. And so I am delighted to have my friend Maria Clark from Good United here today, talking with me about that and some of the implications of my research and all the things that they do at Good United, which are a lot of things. Maria, would you like to introduce yourself, dear?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to join this conversation. We've talked a lot before, and I know it will be full, so thank you. I'm Maria Clark. I'm the EVP of Partnerships and Chief Evangelist at Good United. I've been at this organization for about a year now. I had many years of experience in nonprofit fundraising and management for several decades at the American Cancer Society. So for those who have joined today who are coming to us to learn more ideas and suggestions on what you can do in your nonprofit when it comes to community building, I've sat in your chair, so I understand the challenges that you face and how wonderful it is when you find something that works for your organization. I'm excited to tell you more throughout the conversation today about Good United, but basically we work to empower nonprofits to have a one-on-one relationship with all of the new supporters they find and identify on social media. So I'll leave that there and we can unravel that throughout the conversation.
So I'm going to kind of frame the conversation with some of the things that we're thinking a lot about at Turnkey. And if you've ever seen me do a webinar with my wife, Katrina Van Huss, she interrupts me all the time. So I've asked Maria just to behave like she's Katrina because I'm used to
Okay,
that and I respond very well to that. So
that sounds
anyway,
good.
so let's start out talking about events. You know, the problem with events, 75% fundraiser acquisition year over year. We have to do that for just about every P2P event. We've treated this like it's a success, but it isn't. Our donors don't transition. Our fundraisers don't transition. You know, we've accepted this, but this has been our mistake. And it's not that we don't know how to do events now. We have perfected best practices for events, but it's like we've been making the best Volkswagen Beetle instead of inventing a Tesla. So today, I just want to kind of change the frame a little bit and back up to 50,000 feet. So we're going to talk about fundraising in a bigger context, community-based fundraising. This is an idea that's been out there for a while, and it's picked up steam again, rightfully so, during COVID as nonprofits began to rely on these virtual communities. And Maria's going to talk about one in particular that I've been studying, and that's the Facebook virtual communities. So let's talk about what is a community. Anything that a group has in common, from a zip code to a shoe preference, can be a community. And I am absolutely fascinated by a group on Facebook called Teaks Anonymous, T-I-E-K-S Anonymous. And Teaks is this kind of shoe, and the Facebook group has more than 43,000 members. And I'd love to go and check into this group. Post that was done 19 hours ago. Here it is. Today, my love-struck Teaks took me to have my cochlear implant activated. It was a very successful day. 98 comments in response to that post. Just stunning, the amount of engagement that these people have all around this Teaks group. Members aren't just women, although these are technically women's shoes, but I'll let you explore that for yourself if you like to go on Teaks Anonymous. So many nonprofits define their community as the people in their database, the people that they have emails for, but that's really not sufficient. And that's one of the lessons that the Teaks Anonymous group should teach us. So for our purposes, a community is two things. They're people with, first, a shared interest, like Teak shoes, but second, and what most nonprofits miss, is a way to communicate with each other. And, Maria, I've got to reference the Facebook groups here. What is it about Facebook groups that make, well, I think we actually have a slide here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes this idea so powerful. Communicate with each other. That's the key, right?
Right. So, I mean, you nailed it when you said the definition of community is evolving. So we've seen this happen, I think, over the past decade almost, but it really brought it sharply into focus, with COVID, because the communities that many nonprofits had relied on to serve as their supporter base, and the way they brought people together was through geographical communities and events. There was also some attempt to create some virtual experiences, which in some ways created a community, but I think the two-way communication and the providing people a way to engage is really what has helped to redefine community in different ways than we ever thought before. And so what we have done at Good United in helping organizations create challenges on Facebook, a core part of that is creating a group experience. First, you have to find people that have a kindred spirit, or they have, they're engaging around the same cause, or they are really interested in a brand, or they really like the activity. So giving people a motivation to be a part of a group. That's what we have done with the challenges on Facebook. And then once they join that group, it's been really quite amazing to see how these communities coalesce. You bring them together, they start building their own connections. They start really interacting and having literally two-way conversations. And it is happening, in Facebook groups. This example here, we've worked closely with Susan G. Komen for many years. And one of the first groups we stood up was around this burpees challenge. And at the time, one of their leaders made this quote here that he watched the group grow a sense of community organically, and it doubled the number of people in the group. So previously you talked about, events, they continue to evolve, but it used to be, volunteers and staff and advertising going out and finding people to join your event, to join your group, and then providing an opportunity, for engagement at the event, or at the kickoff, or at the team captain meeting, or wherever the case may be. Facebook groups, you can do it all in channel. One of the things that we have really focused on is making sure that we are keeping people in the place where they are spending their time. And for many, many people, that's on Facebook. And so that's why we've built our solutions, on this platform. But it really is creating true activity and connections. And another challenge that we did with Susan G. Komen, the cycling challenge, they had 3,900 group members. So 3,900 people joined this group. And we validated their activity by really tracking what they did in that group. 2,050 posts were shared by group members. And what that told us is that people want to share their story. They want a place.
That's a staggering amount of engagement. It just it blows my mind.
So 2,000 people were so motivated because they felt they belonged to this group that they shared their story. 5,620 people commented on these posts. And that shows that there was a desire to interact with each other. And then 26,700 reactions were made on the posts and comments. So again, it shows that people want to interact and they want to support each other, because for the vast majority of these, they were positive engagements of support, congratulations, thank you, and just true connections. So we've really seen the basic, premise of being a part of a group translate onto Facebook. It's an excellent place to do that. And it's really helping nonprofits find new supporters, raise revenue, and really deeply engage with the people that have come to their activity. Yeah, it's been pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about it is, people find being members of groups to be incredibly rewarding. And that's why they're doing all this. This is why you see all this engagement. That's why I love to get this little jolt of it when I go and look at the Teaks group, because it's just so interesting to see how people just love to be part of these groups. They just find it terribly, terribly rewarding.
And I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to be Katrina for a minute. Okay. One of the amazing things that we're finding is that being on the Facebook platform and engaging with people where they spend their time, organizations are finding brand new supporters, people they've never spoken to before, people that have never engaged or donated to their organization before. I mean, Susan G. Komen does an amazing job, has millions and millions of supporters, but they, and along with all the other partners, are finding new supporters, new people that want to be a part of your community.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting too, Maria, that they don't necessarily even have to have a personal connection to the mission. For example, they don't necessarily have to have someone who's has been affected by breast cancer. They just have to have a good, positive experience being in that community, right?
Yeah, they get validated. They're validated by being a part of a community that's accepting them. They obviously want to interact, they want to share, they want to support. So it's really kind of meeting an emotional need that communities and groups do traditionally, that we've experienced through events and other activities.
Oh, I completely agree with you. Now, what Maria was talking about with these, with the types of groups that they set up. When group members share a common goal and not just an interest like the Teaks group, that's when the community can become a movement. And it's those movements that really make change happen. They raise money, they do things, and so forth. So these communities have goals. Of course, Teaks isn't a movement. It's just a bunch of people who like to talk with each other, and they have the shoe thing in common. But I can think of other organizations where they have a lot of cross-channel talking, like the NRA. Like them or dislike them, I dislike them. But the NRA has members that are hugely engaged with each other. Their identity as Second Amendment supporters are it's very salient, as psychologists would say, to their identity. And because of that, they have this huge outsized impact on American society. So that being said, what's the formula for community? What's the formula for building a person's sense of community? How does community building actually work? Because until you really understand and master that, you really can't make use of it for good, to fulfill all of our missions. So this is how I look at it. A community is just the sum of the engagements with the community, with the other members. And again, I study identity. Identity results in a sense of belonging with the community. And as we said earlier, this sense of belonging is very, very rewarding to people. It really makes them happy. And that's, of course, has been the general formula for Facebook success, because being in part of these communities just makes people happy. It's very rewarding. And so I kind of have, you had some interesting things about this.
Well, I wanted to share this because I like what you said, what builds a community. And I think what we have learned is that it's really about how deeply you're able to engage people. Like how do they feel a part of it? How do they feel like they're working together towards a common cause? And what we're seeing in many of our Facebook challenges are happy people like you see here, but basically the people in these groups, once they join the group and they start fundraising and they start engaging, they're taking advantage of the opportunities for sharing, for celebrating each other, for recognizing success, for inspiring others. And again, that all leads to increased engagement with a nonprofit. And that ultimately will improve fundraising, return more dollars to the mission, and create an opportunity for the nonprofits to understand who is supporting their organization and why they're engaged. We use a lot of different, I'll call them strategies, but providing, filters like you see here. We have a tracker. So if you have a challenge for 31 miles, we have a tracker. And one of the biggest things that we see people sharing is their progress for the day, or what I finished this week, or when they completed it, they get a badge, which they then share within the group. And, they allow this deeper engagement with this community because they feel like they're, again, together working towards a common cause. We typically see like 50% of the people that actually become members of that group and get actively engaged are communicating with each other and with a nonprofit. Because another option that we provide and we encourage people to do is to opt into Messenger, which then allows the nonprofits to have an even deeper relationship, a one-on-one relationship with these individual supporters. You can talk to them again in the channel where they're spending their time, which means the open rates are so much more significantly higher than email, because you're talking to people where their community is, where their group is. We're also seeing that the higher the number of people that join your group, your Facebook group, as part of the challenge, the higher number of people that actually start fundraising. So you have fewer $0 fundraisers, which I know we all experience. in our event space, but it's another strategy to encourage people to not only join the group, but to take advantage of the tools provided and, raise funds to support the organization they care about. And then a lot of people just as I said in the last slide, love to show what they're doing. So it's a great way to really build that community through this engagement.
In a moment, my dogs are going to start barking at
I
your
know, I'm
dogs.
sorry.
No, it's quite all right. It happens to all of us.
Shut two doors and it's just
It's
too
fine.
loud.
It's just, yeah, I know, I understand. It's interesting. I don't want to go all psychologically wonky here, but there's something that's very, very important in psychology and social psychology called self-determination theory. And when you talk to people who are satisfied with various aspects of their lives, they talk about three different things. They talk about first, they have a sense of autonomy. They're doing this on their own. There's no one that's pulling the strings or giving them something in order to do it. The second is competence. They feel like they have a sense of competence. They feel like they're good at fundraising or whatever it is that they're doing to make something happen. And the third they have a sense of they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And so, when you were talking, I'm thinking, wow, what you're describing checks all three of those boxes. And, the faces on the screen here, these are people that feel autonomy, competence, and a sense of being something bigger than themselves. And if you're providing people with that, you're going to have a lot of people coming back. You're going to have a lot of people staying.
We do.
Right.
I'll jump in there too, in that we are really working now to lean into that. We try to follow the proven practices of peer-to-peer events and apply them in a new way through these Facebook challenges on Facebook and engaging on groups. So like you said, creating autonomy. You can choose to start your fundraiser and to raise as much as you want. We're going to coach and help you along the way, giving you the recognition that many people desire and the ability to share their successes and repeat attendance. So just like we drive for retention, you talked about retention at the beginning of the conversation, and it's always a challenge, and we're trying to unlock that in our challenges on Facebook as well. So when an organization hosts the second year of a challenge, how can we get some of those participants from the year before to come back again? And we're seeing the same trend lines where year two participants raise more dollars because they know what they're doing, they know how to do it. And so we're continuing to discover how to apply more of those best practices from peer to peer in these communities that we're building in Facebook groups.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too far off track, but when I talk to early stage nonprofits and so forth that are just getting going and so on, the first thing I say is, are you on Facebook? Have you registered for Facebook? That is your best, easiest path to taking off as quickly as possible. That's definitely the way to go.
That's good. Yeah, we can have a whole nother conversation about that, but
okay.
that is a very good point. Because it is a place where some people choose to find their, connections. And so you should absolutely be taking advantage of the opportunity that Facebook provides.
Now, okay, I have to do it because I'm a psychologist. I have to go a little psychology on you. So why do I think that this is so important? Why do I think that this is so successful? As psychologists, we know that people's identity makes them more likely to do certain things, how they see themselves. One thing is to engage with other members of their community. So if you're an NRA member, you're a Second Amendments person, you're more likely to go on the NRA webpage and interact with those members. If you're a member of the Teaks group, you're more likely to engage with members of the Teaks shoe guys. Now, every time that happens, every time you engage with your community, it strengthens your identity. And that in turn makes you even more likely to re-engage. And it's like this wheel that goes round and round and round. And so what Maria is describing in these groups is every time people are engaging with others, their identity is strengthened as a warrior for against breast cancer or whatever it is that community is built around. And I talked about 75% acquisition being something we need to do traditionally in peer-to-peer for these events. Just simply acquiring someone to the community, that doesn't really have a huge impact on your identity just in and of itself. The first donation or registration to fundraise that people often make is often based on emotion. It's kind of like impulse shopping based on the nonprofit's mission. I've been guilty of this myself. And emotions are very volatile. They're short in duration. And oftentimes, because we know how often we have to require these people, that this isn't sustained. The ice bucket challenge, for example, at ALS, they didn't really convert a huge number of these folks to be long-term supporters, even though there was that burst of engagement. It really didn't sustain. Maria.
Yeah, I think I really wanted to lean in on, you mentioned before, identity, stronger identity, building community, and once you get someone into a group doesn't automatically mean that they're going to be deeply engaged, but it is a circle, because when we first start a challenge, we try to get as many people as possible into a group. Then we kind of encourage them to share their experience through the posts that they put for these private groups that they would create. We give them a little bit of a guidance of how they can use posts effectively. And this was a great example of how emotional you can create a true emotion in a group that, I didn't think it was possible. When I first started working with Good United, I was like, it's virtual, it's Facebook. There's no way it's the same feel that you get from events. But I think this is a great testament. First, you get people to join your group because they care about the cause, they care about the activity, they're looking for something to do. Once they're in the group, we guide them to, organically share, post, help us celebrate, be encouraging. This is an example of a mom who shared her reason for participating because she had lost her son. You can see at the bottom all the reactions she got. I'm sure there's much more since has happened, and people started commenting. Creating a true emotion of support, thanking her for sharing, giving her hugs, telling their story about why they're going to do their activity now in honor of this precious child. So the level of emotion you're able to create in these Facebook groups really surprised me. And I think that, again, reinforces their identity. They're joining because they care about a cause, or they're joining because they've been impacted by an issue and it's important to them. And then they're validated when people start connecting, responding, replying, and creating true friendships. I've seen it in a lot of other challenges too. People discover they're in the same community. There's, hey, we should meet up to do our steps together, to do our walk together. So it's building emotional connections on the platform on Facebook, but also I hope to believe maybe some lifetime friendships, or some, people that are going to start working out together, or just, another way to translate their investment or their belief in this community and how engaged they are by reaching out and really trying to connect. I didn't think it was possible. It surprised me. And I keep seeing it happening again and again.
Absolutely. I have a question, maybe this is appropriate here. It's, how would you gauge low engagement in the Facebook groups, and what do you recommend that can be done to increase engagement?
That's a really good point. We have found through the years that the best way to grow engagement is to allow the participants to drive it and to own it, and to encourage them to post and to share. When nonprofits, this is definitely a great place to share information about your nonprofit. But if a nonprofit puts a post into a group and directs people to do X, Y, or Z, or it doesn't feel personal, it doesn't get the same level of engagement as the participants in the group organically sharing. So that's the sweet spot. The more they share, the more it drives deeper engagement from others, the more it inspires others to start a fundraiser. There's lots of different ways, but letting the participants own it, just like we used to in our events, or we still do in our events. We want volunteers to own it and make it theirs, and that's a much higher level of success. The same seems to apply in these Facebook groups as well, as let the participants own it and share and drive the conversation with as little investment or as little insertion as possible directly from the nonprofit. It's a little counterintuitive to what most nonprofits typically do, but it's just allowing the conversation to go where the participants want it to go.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And
Mhm.
you guys have been putting self-determination theory into practice without even knowing it. So I applaud
Right.
you. It's a big thing.
Right.
So, we've kind of worked all the way around this, but, single events, they're a moment in time that they don't generalize. They're not salient enough, as psychologists say, with regard to a person's identity. This point was really hit home to me at a dinner party some months ago. We had a group of people over, and I do all the cooking in our home. So I prepared some lovely pork tenderloins with béarnaise sauce, and two of them turned out to be vegans. Didn't know this in advance. So, we got into this conversation. They did enjoy my lovely cold pea side salad, however, which is a big winner. And, we got into talking about veganism, and I was amazed by how many ways they have to express that part of their identity. In the clothes they wear, they adopt animals, where they shop, they grow food. I mean, it was a huge, veganism is a lifestyle for these people. There aren't that many people that can say that warrior against breast cancer is a part of my lifestyle. It's one thing that they do, but it's really not that embedded in their identities. And as Maria's talking about, that's impacted hugely by the vegans at dinner were part of this vegan community. And I ran across this not too long ago when I was doing some research for these webinars. This is from the Together Institute. I'd never heard of them, but they have some really interesting things. You should Google them about building communities and so forth. And they had this little test for how strong your community is. And it's a real simple one. So if a person who's a member of the same community as me, but the two of us have never met, contacts me and asks for my help, how likely am I to help him or her? And, how much would you, it goes into how much would you feel connected to them? Would you answer their email? Would you return a phone call? Would they go to a gathering if they invite you? Now, I suspect, Maria, that many of the people, as you were talking about in these Facebook groups, they say yes. They would say yes to this kind of an outreach from people because they just feel that connected through their Facebook group. And, I like this little simple test because, it assumes that the stronger the community, the stronger is this shared identity, and the stronger is really the trust among the members. And, trust is something that's actionable. Trust leads to more action. And so, I just thought it was fascinating that a community strength can be measured by the number of engagements. We can look at the number of engagements that a person has and look at the commitment to the group, the strength of the group in that way as well. And, I mentioned my research. Good United talks about there have been 3 waves in fundraising. First was just writing checks and giving cash directly to nonprofit, and that went on for a long time. And then 20 years ago, you know this better than me, Maria, donating and fundraising on fundraising platforms that were hosted by nonprofits got started 20 years ago, perhaps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the third wave is what we're talking about today. It's this social media fundraising. It's fundraising on the social platform where people go and finding them where they are, where they're being social, like on Facebook. And my research was I looked at the effect of traditional recognition on Facebook fundraising. So I worked the Spina Bifida Association, and I said, hey, if you start a Facebook fundraiser and you even raise $1, the Spina Bifida Association will recognize your efforts on the Spina Bifida Association page. And what I found was, I found no impact whatsoever of this kind of traditional recognition that's worked so well on, platforms and so forth for so many years. I didn't find any effect for the either starting a Facebook fundraiser or increasing the amount of money that people's raised. So the kind of recognition we've used in the first couple of waves just isn't effective in this third wave, the social media platforms. And I think this is because social media is so effective at people being seen by friends and peers, just by its very nature, that traditional recognition is really irrelevant. People are seen just every time they engage. And that's why I say that, it's really engagement is the new recognition. And so our goal should really be getting people engaged on these platforms. When people engage on social media, they're going to be seen by others and they're going to be recognized. I found it so interesting. One of the things that I was talking about with you when we were at the conference was you had surveyed some folks who had started successful Facebook fundraisers and unsuccessful Facebook fundraisers. And the ones who were unsuccessful in meeting their goals said that they were unlikely to start another one because they were kind of embarrassed that their friends saw that they had a flopped Facebook fundraiser. And I thought, wow, that's really telling about just how much people perceive that they're being seen by others on these social platforms.
That's kind of been what's led to the explosive growth of social platforms is, it may not be recognition from the nonprofit that you're fundraising for, but recognition, like you said, from your peers or other people you've met in the groups and communities. And so I think that's kind of a different motivator than we've ever thought of in the past for those who have been fundraising for years. It's a different way of thinking about how can we allow these folks, I guess, to create recognition. And that's where those filters come into play, or the ability to share your progress. Because when you post those is when you get validation, which then deepens your engagement, deepens your commitment to reaching your goal or hitting your fundraising goal, or why you're sending out a message and putting yourself out there in front of your friends and family. So it's an interesting way to really look into, as social media grows, as other platforms come on board and create fundraising tools, what are the best ways to create the same experience? And, one of the most important things that we're really leaning into is allowing nonprofits to have this engagement with the supporters after the challenge is over. So getting them to opt into Messenger and create a one-to-one conversation with these individuals, find out why they participated, what motivates them, ask them if they'd like to participate in some other way with the organization, or, come back again next year. But that, we're hoping to unlock, lifetime value of long-term supporters who came in, through this platform. One of the things that we like to say is sending the right message at the right time to the right person in the right channel to drive repeat action. And all of those steps along the way is about engagement, sending the right message that engages their interest at the right time when they are ready to be engaged, in the right channel where they're spending their time. Once we know more about them, we'll be able to hopefully speak to them and have a one-to-one personalized relationship, which deepens the engagement. And of course, driving repeat action is all about deeper engagement, because you're now committed to that organization much deeper than a one-time gift.
Yeah, and let me just echo something you said, because I couldn't agree with you more. And I wrote a very painful dissertation that proved this point. So I kind of put my time in on this one. But I think you are 100% right, Maria, that being seen by your peers and friends is a huge form of recognition. Much more so than being recognized just by the nonprofit that you're fundraising for example. People all have what psychologists call image motivation. We like others to see that we're a good people, and that's very important to us. And quite honestly, that was the whole idea behind these traditional recognition programs. We're going to recognize you not so you see them, but so other people can see them. And so just the very fact that you're seen as someone who fundraises for animals, or who adopts dogs, or whatever the thing is. You can tell I'm kind of an animal rights guy because I use all these examples come to mind. But that kind of recognition that's kind of built into the social platform because people are seen by others doing these good works is just incredibly powerful. So we have a question.
One thing.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
No.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. We have a question from Mariella. A lot of times the organization does not know that someone is fundraising for them. How can you take care of that? And I bet you have an answer for that.
Well, and actually, I mean, that is one of the values that Good United brings to our partners, is that we are able to work with Facebook and Meta and get the data that nonprofits need, and understand who is giving. You talked about the evolution, the shifts of giving went from, in checks and door to door, and then we went to event websites, and then social media came on the scene. In 2018, nonprofits started getting checks from Facebook, and they had no idea where it was coming from or what it was. But once they figured out it was people, creating birthday fundraisers on Facebook, they would still not get enough information to even say thank you. And so what Good United has done is established a relationship where we do get that data from Facebook that we can deliver to our nonprofit partners and show who is giving. Have they given through a birthday campaign? Have they participated in a challenge? Gather their email, encourage them to opt into Messenger, and help nonprofits create that one-to-one relationship. So currently you cannot get that level of individualized information and contact information from Facebook unless you partner with Good United. So that's the value that we bring to our partnerships.
Right.
So I'd love to talk to Mayella. Give me a call.
Well, I'm going to just to conclude here, I'm going to ask you to kind of walk us through that process. What is that process? What's the magic sauce? How do you guys do it? Because I know it's very, very effective.
Good. Well, I touched on some portions of this throughout our conversation, but before I even get into the challenge side of it, when we do partner with nonprofits, we do work with you on those birthday fundraisers come in and make sure that every single one of them is thanked and that you are given the opportunity to communicate with them. So kind of managing that in a much more effective way. So you have a relationship and who has been donating or has created a birthday fundraiser that benefits your organization. So that's one part of it. But we also realized when the pandemic hit and that many events had to be canceled, that this was going to create a acquisition problem. Like, how are nonprofits going to be able to go out and find new supporters and drive them to a fundraising effort when you don't have an in-person event? And that was what the genesis of our challenges on Facebook was all about. So it's a virtual and social first fundraising solution. So starting on the left, we create ads that we put out into the Facebook universe that, again, it tries to attract people who care about the cause, who care about the activity, who care about the mission of the nonprofit. Just find an affinity with whatever, intrigued by the challenge that is built. So we get them quickly to register for the challenge via Facebook with a simple registration form. The next thing is we pour them and push them into a Facebook group, which is where we start building the community of dynamics. So we have community managers to make sure that when people come into the group, they're welcomed. They understand, what the group's about, how to use it, how do you post, what do we like to traditionally post? So people find ways to really encourage people to engage and be a part of that Facebook group as their new community and make sure it's a good experience. Then we make it very easy for the individuals who join that group to, in one click, start a fundraiser. So you don't have to create a new website or register anything. You're right there in Facebook. You click and you can start a fundraiser quite easily for the duration of the challenge. Throughout the time period of the challenge, we coach them for those that start fundraisers. Have you recommendations on how to ask your friends, templates on how to reach out and ask people to support your effort and to fundraise or to donate on, on behalf of them to this organization? And then also use that in-channel messaging to really thank them, appreciate them, share filters, tell them when they've hit their milestones, thank them again and again, and tell them a little bit about the nonprofit that they're now fundraising for and a part of that community. And then, of course, at the end is making sure we celebrate, recognizing those that completed the activity, that hit their fundraising goal, that participated, allow them to show off, again, drive that validation from their friends and family and other people on Facebook. But really like make it feel like an event cycle, even though it's only a 90-day experience. And then on the other side of that, not on the screen, is the long-term engagement that we are working to build for nonprofits so they can continue to talk to the people that have opted into Messenger, and get them engaged again in some way, either with your organization directly and becoming an advocate or volunteer, or staying right here in channel and continuing to support the organization either next year, or maybe you participate in a challenge and now you're going to start a birthday fundraiser. But just finding ways to make sure that the nonprofits have this one-on-one relationship and empower them to really work with these individuals as a new, just like you would a new donor or a new event participant. So it's kind of all, I don't want to say turnkey, but it's not an easy process. Good United brings the people, the process, and the technology to run this in partnership with you, the nonprofit, without you having to build up an extensive staff or even the technology. We bring that to the partnership. So thank you for letting me share that. And I'm happy to talk to anyone that has joined today or will listen to this in the future and tell you more about it. And, go on our website as well at goodunited.io. There's case studies like the No Kid Hungry and the Susan G. Komen one that I shared earlier. But there's case studies of nonprofits that have actually found tremendous success in partnering with Good United. So please take a look, reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. Any way possible, I'd love to talk to you more.
We've got a question. Do you create a new group every year?
No, we, if it's the same event, we reopen the group. So we'll, I think the word is hibernate. We hibernate the group several days after the challenge is over. And then when it's time, if you are going to repeat a year from now, we'll reopen it early for returning members and then work to really find some more new members to join it in year 2.
Got it. You mentioned that COVID had accelerated this virtual communities and so forth. My research and other folks' research say that it just accelerated something that was going to happen anyway. Because we couldn't get together live, we had to find other ways. But I think that this was the future, and the proof of the pudding is that we have to reacquire 75% of people to these live events, whereas building a virtual community is a very different experience for the nonprofit.
Yeah, I think it's really smart for nonprofits to really start learning now what are the possibilities, what's the potential, what's the infrastructure that you need to build, who can you partner with. Like you said, it's not going away. I think events are continuing to thrive and there's a space for them, but there's a whole new space now where we know there are people and potential supporters out there who have never engaged with your organization before. So why not go out and find them and give them a warm welcome into your organization? And again, I've said it over and over, but where they're spending their time, not asking people to, get in the car and drive somewhere. There's a lot of people that just don't want to do that. They can stay right where they're spending their time. And I think the more nonprofits really start building that infrastructure now, the better poised they will be as this continues. I think social media is going to continue to explode as other platforms really become efficient at acquisition and fundraising and working with nonprofits to build their donor base and, continue to fuel their mission, which is ultimately what everyone's trying to do.
I agree. I know I don't want to get in my car anymore. So if I'm like everyone else, and I think most people do feel that way now.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that, I've seen tremendous events coming out of COVID, and I don't think they're ever going away, but I think that it's short-sighted not to understand that there are a lot of people out there that want to engage with you in a different way.
Sure. I do hear from nonprofits a lot that people saying, well, we know that people are anxious to get together again. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure that I agree with that at all. I think some people may be, but some people are never going back.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
engage with them where you find them. Well,
Yeah.
Maria, we don't have any other questions. So we're going to wrap this up.
Okay.
Here's Maria's contact information, my contact information. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us here.
That's right.
And thank you everyone for coming today and sharing the Turnkey webinar.
Thank you.